Marcus Chen walked slowly to his small house after another long day fixing the air machines. His back hurt, and his hands were dirty from working with metal pipes all day. The colony needed clean air to breathe on this strange planet called Kalara, and Marcus was one of the few people who knew how to fix the big machines that made it happen. He lived alone in a small round building made of white plastic and metal. It was not much, but it kept him warm and safe. The other colonists lived in similar houses, scattered across the valley. There were only 43 people living on Kalara, and they all worked hard to make their new home livable. Marcus missed his wife Sarah every day. She had died in a ship accident 2 years ago, before they could even reach this planet together. Now he came home to an empty house every night and ate dinner by himself. The silence felt heavy around him. He heated up a can of protein soup and sat at his small metal table. Outside his window, he could see the purple sky getting darker. Kalara had strange colors: purple skies, orange grass, and trees with silver leaves that made soft sounds in the wind. It was beautiful but alien. After dinner, Marcus scraped his leftover soup into a bowl and walked outside to throw it in the waste bin behind his house. This was when he saw them for the first time. 3 small animals were digging through his garbage. They looked like wolf cubs but were different somehow. Their fur was silver gray with dark stripes, and they were about the size of house cats. When they heard him coming, they looked up with bright purple eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. Marcus stopped walking. The cubs stared at him without running away. There was something strange about their eyes. They looked smart, almost like they were thinking about what to do next. Most wild animals on Kalara ran away as soon as they saw humans. "Hey there, little ones," Marcus said softly. "You look hungry." The cubs tilted their heads, still watching him carefully. The biggest one took a small step forward, then stopped. Marcus could see their ribs showing through their thin fur. They were very skinny. Marcus looked down at the bowl of leftover soup in his hands. He was supposed to throw it away, but these cubs looked like they needed food more than the garbage bin did. Slowly, he set the bowl on the ground and stepped back. "Go ahead," he said. "It's not much, but it might help." The smallest cub moved first. It crept forward on low legs, sniffed the bowl, then started eating quickly. The other 2 followed, and soon all 3 were sharing the soup. They did not fight over the food like normal animals might. Instead, they took turns and seemed to watch out for each other. Marcus watched them eat and felt something warm in his chest. It had been a long time since he had taken care of anyone else. When the cubs finished eating, they looked up at him again. The biggest one made a soft sound, almost like it was saying, "Thank you." "You're welcome," Marcus said, even though he felt silly talking to animals. The cubs backed away slowly. But they did not run. They went to the edge of his yard and lay down under a big rock. Marcus could see their purple eyes watching him as he picked up the empty bowl and went inside. The next evening, Marcus found the cubs waiting by his door. They sat in a neat line, looking at him with those strange, smart eyes. This time, Marcus did not even think about throwing his leftovers away. He put his extra food in the bowl and set it outside. Again, the cubs ate politely and looked at him when they finished. The biggest one made that soft sound again. Marcus started to think it really was trying to say thank you. This became their routine. Every night after dinner, Marcus would bring out whatever food he had left over. Sometimes it was soup, sometimes bread, sometimes pieces of the artificial meat that came in silver packages. The cubs always waited patiently and always ate without fighting. After a week, the cubs started looking healthier. Their fur grew thicker, and their purple eyes seemed brighter. They also became less afraid of Marcus. Sometimes they would walk closer to him while they ate, and once the smallest one actually touched his hand with its nose. The other colonists started to notice. Tom Bradley, who lived in the next house over, came by one evening while Marcus was feeding the cubs. "You shouldn't do that," Tom said, frowning. "Wild animals can be dangerous. What if they get bigger and decide they want more than just your leftovers?" Marcus looked at the 3 cubs eating quietly from their bowl. They were bigger than when he first found them, but they still seemed gentle and polite. "I don't think they'll hurt anyone," Marcus said. "Look at them. They're just hungry children. They're animals, Marcus. Wild animals. You've been alone too much since Sarah died. Maybe you should talk to Dr. Martinez about feeling better." Tom meant well, but his words made Marcus feel angry. He was not crazy or sick. He was just trying to help some hungry creatures. There was nothing wrong with that. "I'm fine," Marcus said firmly. "And I'm going to keep feeding them." Tom shook his head and walked away. Marcus heard him talking to other colonists later that night. They were worried about him, but Marcus did not care what they thought. The cubs needed his help, and he was going to keep helping them. As the weeks passed, the cubs grew more comfortable around Marcus. They would arrive just before sunset and wait by his door like polite dinner guests. Sometimes they brought him things, small stones with pretty colors, or pieces of shiny metal that Marcus had never seen before. Marcus began to look forward to their visits. After eating alone for so long, it felt good to share dinner time with someone else, even if they were just animals. The cubs seemed to enjoy his company too. They would lie down near his house after eating and sometimes fall asleep in his yard. The purple-eyed cubs had become the bright spot in Marcus's quiet life on the alien planet. Winter was coming to Kaelara, and Marcus worried about his small friends. The nights were getting colder, and he could see frost forming on the silver trees. He started leaving out extra food, and even set up a small shelter made of metal sheets near his house. The cubs used the shelter gratefully. Marcus often saw them huddled together inside it during the cold nights, their purple eyes glowing like small stars in the darkness. 3 months had passed since Marcus first found the cubs digging through his garbage. Now they were much bigger, about the size of medium dogs, and their silver fur had grown thick and beautiful. Their purple eyes seemed even brighter than before, and Marcus was starting to notice things about them that made him wonder if they were really just ordinary animals. The cubs had learned to knock on his door. Not scratching like normal animals might do, but actually knocking with their paws in a pattern. 3 soft taps, then 2, then 1. Marcus had never taught them this. They had figured it out on their own somehow. They also brought him gifts almost every day. At first, Marcus thought the pretty stones and metal pieces were just random things they found while exploring. But now, he was not so sure. Yesterday, the biggest cub had brought him a chunk of blue crystal that was perfectly smooth and warm to the touch. Marcus had never seen anything like it on Kaelara before. "Where did you find this, big guy?" Marcus asked, holding up the crystal. The cub looked at him and made a series of soft sounds that almost sounded like it was trying to talk. Then it pointed with its nose toward the mountains in the distance. Marcus stared at the cub. Had it really understood his question and tried to answer? That seemed impossible. But the cub was clearly trying to communicate something about the mountains. The other colonists were starting to talk more about Marcus and his pets. Some thought he was getting too attached to wild animals. Others were curious about how smart the cubs seemed to be. Dr. Elizabeth Martinez, the colony's scientist, came to visit Marcus one evening while he was feeding them. "Mind if I watch?" she asked. "Tom told me some interesting things about these cubs." "Sure," Marcus said. He set down the bowl of food as usual. The cubs immediately sat in their normal line and waited for him to step back before they started eating. Dr. Martinez watched with wide eyes. "They're very polite," she said. "Most animals would just rush to the food right away. They've always been like that," Marcus said. "Even when they were tiny and starving, they never fought over the food." While they watched, something unexpected happened. The smallest cub finished eating first and walked over to Dr. Martinez. She stood very still as it sniffed her feet, then looked up at her face. The cub made a soft sound, then went back to sit with its family. "It's like it was introducing itself," Dr. Martinez said quietly. "Marcus, these animals are showing behavior I've never seen before. They might not be native to this planet." "What do you mean?" "Well, we've been studying the local wildlife for 2 years now. Nothing else on Kaelara shows this level of intelligence or social behavior. These cubs might be from somewhere else entirely." That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about what Dr. Martinez had said. Where could the cubs have come from? There were no other planets with life close to Kaelara. The nearest inhabited world was months away by spaceship. The next morning, Marcus woke up to the sound of his emergency alarm. There was a problem with the main air processing plant. One of the big machines that cleaned their air had broken down. If they could not fix it quickly, the whole colony might have trouble breathing. Marcus grabbed his tools and ran to the plant. The other engineers were already there, looking worried. The main filter system had completely stopped working, and they could not figure out why. "The whole thing just shut down," said Jenny Walsh, the chief engineer. "All the readings look normal, but it won't start up again." Marcus crawled under the machine to check the power connections. It was hot and cramped under there, and he had to squeeze between sharp metal edges. While he was reaching for a loose wire, his hand slipped and he cut himself badly on a jagged piece of metal. "Ow!" Marcus yelled, pulling his hand back. Blood was dripping from a deep cut across his palm. "I need help." Ground, but the other engineers were on the far side of the big machine and could not hear him over the noise of other equipment. Marcus was stuck under the machine, bleeding, and no one knew where he was. That was when he heard the familiar soft knocking sound. 3 taps, 2 taps, 1 tap. Marcus looked toward the sound and saw purple eyes glowing in the darkness under the machine. "How did you get in here?" Marcus asked the biggest cub. The plant was inside a building with closed doors. The cubs should not have been able to get inside. The cub made worried sounds when it saw Marcus bleeding. Then it backed out from under the machine and ran away. Marcus felt disappointed. He thought the cub was abandoning him when he needed help, but a few minutes later, Marcus heard voices coming closer. "Over here, under the main processor." It was Dr. Martinez's voice. Soon, several people were pulling Marcus out from under the machine and bandaging his hand. Dr. Martinez looked at him with a puzzled expression. "How did you know to come looking for me?" Marcus asked. "That big cub came running to find us," she said. "It kept making noise and pulling at my clothes until I followed it. It led us straight here." "Marcus, that animal came to get help for you on purpose." Marcus looked around and saw all 3 cubs sitting nearby, watching him with worried expressions. When the medic finished wrapping his hand, the cubs came closer and gently sniffed his bandages. "Thank you," Marcus whispered to them. The biggest cub made that soft sound that Marcus had learned meant, "You're welcome." Over the next few weeks, Marcus started paying closer attention to what the cubs could do. He began teaching them simple things, just to see how much they could learn. First, he taught them to sit and stay like dogs. They learned this in just 1 day. Then, he taught them to bring him specific tools when he was working. He would point to a wrench and say, "Wrench," and soon they could bring him the right tool just by hearing the word. But the cubs wanted to learn more than just simple commands. Marcus started drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick, simple shapes like circles and squares. The cubs watched carefully, then tried to copy the shapes with their own paws. Within a week, they could draw basic shapes better than some human children. "This is incredible," Dr. Martinez said when Marcus showed her what the cubs could do. "They're learning at the rate of intelligent beings, not animals." The whole colony was talking about Marcus's cubs now. Some people were excited and wanted to study them more. Others were worried about having such intelligent creatures living among them. But Marcus did not care what the other colonists thought. The cubs had become his family. Every evening, they would gather around his house and he would teach them new words and ideas. They seemed to understand that he was trying to help them learn, and they worked hard to please him. Winter was getting colder, and Marcus worried about his friends. He had improved their shelter and even installed a small heater. But the storms on Kalara could be very dangerous. One night, the worst storm anyone had ever seen hit the colony. The wind was so strong that it knocked down power lines and broke windows. The colony lost electricity, and the air processing plants stopped working. Marcus huddled in his dark house, listening to the wind howl outside. Without power, they would run out of clean air in just a few hours. The emergency backup systems were not working either. Then he heard the familiar knocking on his door. When Marcus opened it, all 3 cubs were standing outside in the storm. Their fur was covered with ice, but their purple eyes were bright and urgent. The biggest cub grabbed Marcus's coat in its teeth and pulled toward the door. It wanted him to come outside with them, even though the storm was dangerous. "I can't go out there," Marcus said. "The storm is too strong." But the cubs kept pulling at his clothes and making urgent sounds. Finally, Marcus realized they were trying to tell him something important. They had found something that could help the colony. Marcus put on his heavy winter coat and followed the cubs into the storm. High above the planet Kalara, where no human eye could see, something vast and beautiful hung in the darkness of space. It was not a ship in any way that humans would understand ships. Instead, it was more like a living crystal palace that moved between the stars, its walls made of captured starlight and flowing energy. Inside this impossible vessel, a being of incredible power watched the small human colony below. Her name was Siltharion, the Infinite, and she ruled over 300 star systems. When she spoke, entire worlds listened. When she moved, space itself bent around her presence. Siltharion was tall and graceful, her body seeming to be made of liquid silver and glowing crystal. Her eyes were the deep purple of distant stars. And when she was thinking hard, small lights danced around her like fireflies. She had lived for thousands of human years and had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Right now, she was watching her children. The 3 cubs on the planet below were not really cubs at all. They were her offspring, young star rulers who were going through their most important test. Every young member of her people had to complete the trial of understanding before they could take their place among the cosmic rulers. The trial was simple in concept, but difficult in practice. Young star rulers were placed on a planet with intelligent life, but in a form that made them seem weak and helpless. They had to learn to survive and grow without using their true powers. Most importantly, they had to understand how other beings thought and felt. Most young star rulers completed this trial by making the local creatures fear and serve them. They would reveal their power gradually, demanding worship and obedience. This was the traditional way. Rule through strength and fear. But Siltharion's children were doing something completely different. Instead of demanding worship, they had found a human who worshipped nothing from them, but gave them kindness anyway. Instead of using fear, they had learned to use cooperation and friendship. This had never happened before in the thousands of years that star rulers had been conducting trials. Siltharion watched as the human called Marcus followed her children into the terrible storm. Through her cosmic senses, she could see everything: the broken power systems in the colony, the failing air processors, the humans who would die if help did not come soon. Her children were leading Marcus toward a solution. But not by using their hidden powers. Instead, they had learned the human way of solving problems. By working together and sharing knowledge. The cubs brought Marcus to a place in the mountains where underground heat was coming up through cracks in the rocks. It was a geothermal vent that could provide power for the entire colony if the humans knew how to use it. The cubs had found it during their explorations, and now they were sharing this knowledge with their friend. Marcus did not know that his cubs could have fixed the power problem instantly with their true abilities. He did not know that they could control energy and matter with just a thought. Instead, he saw them as clever animals who had found something useful and wanted to share it with him. "You found a natural power source," Marcus said to the cubs as they led him to the warm rocks. "This could save everyone." The cubs made happy sounds, pleased that they could help their human friend and his community. They worked together to mark the path back to the colony. And Marcus ran through the storm to bring the other engineers to see what had been discovered. Siltharion felt something she had not experienced in a very long time. She was proud of her children, but not for the reasons she had expected. They were not showing the strength and dominance that star rulers valued most. Instead, they were showing something that her people had forgotten: the power of genuine care for others. But Siltharion was not the only star ruler watching this trial. Far across the galaxy, another cosmic being had been observing the situation with growing anger. His name was Vorthak the Consuming, and he ruled his star systems through fear and absolute control. Vorthak believed that showing kindness to lesser beings was a weakness that would destroy the natural order of the universe. Vorthak had been watching Siltharion's children with disgust. In his opinion, they were failing their trial completely. They should have made the humans bow down and worship them by now. Instead, they were acting like pets, serving a creature that should have been serving them. This was wrong and dangerous. If word spread that star rulers could be friends with lesser beings instead of rulers over them, it might give other planets ideas about rebellion. The cosmic order that had existed for thousands of years could fall apart. Vorthak decided that this trial had gone on long enough. It was time to end this foolish experiment and teach both the cubs and the human the proper way of things. He began preparing his war fleet to travel to the small planet called Kalara. Meanwhile, Siltharion continued watching as her children helped save the human colony. The geothermal power source that the cubs had found provided enough energy to restart the air processors and restore heat to all the buildings. The humans were grateful and amazed by the intelligence of Marcus's animal friends. Dr. Martinez studied the cubs more carefully over the following days. She noticed that they seemed to understand human speech perfectly, not just simple commands but complex ideas. When Marcus talked about his work, the cubs listened intently and seemed to understand what he was explaining. "Marcus, Dr. Martinez said one day, I think we need to consider the possibility that these cubs are not from this planet. Their intelligence is beyond anything we've seen in Earth animals too. They might be from an advanced species that we haven't encountered yet." Marcus looked at his three friends, who were sitting politely and listening to the conversation. Their purple eyes seemed to glow with understanding. "You mean they might be like alien children?" Marcus asked. "It's possible. They could be lost. Or maybe they were left here for some reason we don't understand." The biggest cub made a soft sound when it heard this. It walked over to Marcus and gently touched his hand with its nose. Marcus felt the same warmth he always felt when spending time with the cubs, the feeling that they really cared about him as a person, not just as a food provider. "If they are aliens," Marcus said, "then they're the nicest aliens anyone could ask for. They've saved our lives more than once now." High above, Siltharion felt her heart grow warm as she listened to the humans speak about her children with such affection. Marcus had no idea how powerful the cubs really were, but he valued them for their kindness and intelligence. He treated them as friends and family, not as tools or servants. This was something amazing and new. In all her long life, Siltharion had never seen a relationship like this between star rulers and other beings. Her children were learning lessons that no cosmic ruler had ever learned before, but her joy was mixed with worry. She could sense Vorthak's war fleet moving through space toward Kalara. Soon, this peaceful learning would be interrupted by violence and conflict. The trial would become a battle, and Marcus would learn the truth about his animal friends in the most dangerous way possible. Siltharion faced a difficult choice. The traditional way would be to let events unfold naturally, allowing her children to face whatever consequences came from their unusual choices. But the traditional way might result in the death of the human who had taught her children such valuable lessons about kindness and friendship. For the first time in thousands of years, a star ruler began to question whether the old ways were always the best ways. Marcus was fixing a water pump outside the colony when the sky began to change. At first, he thought it was just strange weather. Dark clouds forming in unusual patterns, but then the clouds started glowing with red and orange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. The cubs were with him as always, watching him work and occasionally bringing him tools. But when the lights appeared in the sky, their behavior changed completely. They stood up straight and stiff, their purple eyes blazing much brighter than normal. The air around them began to shimmer like heat waves, even though the day was cool. "What's wrong, guys?" Marcus asked, setting down his wrench. He had never seen the cubs act like this before. They looked scared, but also angry, like they were ready to fight something. The biggest cub, the one Marcus had started calling Alpha, made a sound he had never heard before. It was deep and powerful, almost like the roar of a much larger animal. The sound seemed to vibrate through the ground and up into Marcus's bones. Then the ships came. They appeared suddenly in the sky above the colony, huge and dark and completely unlike anything humans had ever built. The ships were shaped like angular crystals with sharp edges that seemed to cut through the air itself. They moved without making any sound, casting enormous shadows over the small human settlement. Marcus stared up at them with his mouth open. After 2 years on Kalara, the colonists had almost forgotten that they might not be alone in the universe. Now alien ships were hovering directly above their homes, and Marcus had no idea what that meant for him and his neighbors. Everyone inside. Emergency Protocol 7. The voice of Colony Administrator Johnson echoed across the valley through the emergency speakers. This is not a drill. All colonists report to emergency shelters immediately. But Marcus could not move. The cubs were standing between him and the path back to the colony, and they were growing larger. Not just bigger like they had been growing naturally over the past months, but actually expanding before his eyes. Their fur was becoming longer and more silver, and their purple eyes were now glowing so brightly that Marcus could see them clearly even in daylight. "What's happening to you?" Marcus whispered. Alpha looked at him with eyes that suddenly seemed ancient and wise beyond anything Marcus had ever seen in an animal. When Alpha spoke, Marcus almost fell over from shock. "We are sorry, Marcus Chen," Alpha said in perfect human language, though his voice sounded strange and musical. "We wanted to tell you the truth, but we could not. Not until now." "You can talk?" Marcus's voice came out as a squeak. "This whole time? You could talk?" "Yes. And we are not what you think we are." Before Alpha could explain more, beams of light shot down from the alien ships. Where the light touched the ground, strange beings appeared as if they had been teleported from the ships above. These beings looked somewhat like humans, but were much taller and thinner. Their skin seemed to be made of dark metal, and their eyes were flat black with no white parts at all. They wore flowing robes that moved in ways that defied gravity, and they carried weapons that looked like twisted metal sculptures. The leader of these aliens walked straight toward Marcus, ignoring all the other colonists who were running for shelter. When it spoke, its voice came from a small device on its chest that translated its words into English. "Human creature," the alien said. "You will surrender the corrupted offspring to us immediately. You have interfered with sacred laws and must face punishment for your crimes." "I don't understand," Marcus said, his heart beating so fast he thought it might explode. "What offspring? What crimes? I haven't done anything wrong." The alien pointed one long finger at the cubs, who were still growing larger and beginning to look less like animals and more like something else entirely. "These are not animals," the alien said. "These are Star Ruler children, cosmic beings of immense power. You have corrupted them with weakness and false kindness. This cannot be allowed." Marcus looked at the cubs, at Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, as he had named them in his mind. They were now nearly as tall as he was, standing on hind legs that were becoming more human-like by the moment. Their faces were changing too, becoming more intelligent and expressive while keeping some of their wolf-like features. "Star Rulers?" Marcus repeated. "You mean they're aliens? Powerful aliens? The most powerful beings in this galaxy," the alien leader confirmed. "And you have made them weak. You have taught them to serve instead of to rule. This is the greatest crime possible against the cosmic order." Alpha stepped protectively in front of Marcus. When he spoke now, his voice was stronger and carried an authority that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Vorthok," Alpha said to the alien leader, "this human has done no wrong. He has taught us things that our people have forgotten. How to care for others without expecting payment. How to help because it is right to help. How to be friends instead of masters." The alien called Vorthak made a sound of disgust. "Friendship with lesser beings is corruption, young one. You were sent here to learn dominance, not servitude." "We learned something better than dominance," said the cub Marcus had called Beta, her voice softer but equally strong. "We learned that true strength comes from making others stronger, not from making them weak." The third cub, Gamma, moved to stand on Marcus's other side. "This human fed us when we were hungry, even though he had little food to spare. He sheltered us when we were cold, even though we were strangers. He taught us knowledge and skills, even though he gained nothing from it. This is not corruption. This is wisdom." Marcus felt dizzy trying to understand what was happening. His animal friends were actually powerful, alien royalty, and he was somehow in the middle of what seemed like a cosmic family argument. "You don't understand," Marcus said to Vorthak, finding his courage. "They're not weak. They're the strongest, smartest, Most loyal friends I've ever had. They've saved our colony multiple times. They've worked harder than anyone to help us survive on this planet. Vorthak turned his flat black eyes toward Marcus. Silence. Creature. You have poisoned their minds with your primitive concepts of cooperation and mutual aid. They should have enslaved your entire species by now, and forced you to worship them as gods. But why would they want to do that? Marcus asked, genuinely confused. We work together and help each other because it makes everyone stronger. Why would anyone want to be surrounded by slaves and worshippers instead of friends and partners? The question seemed to surprise Vorthak. He stared at Marcus for a long moment, as if he had never considered this idea before. Alpha stepped closer to Marcus and put one transformed hand on his shoulder. This is what we learned from you, my friend. That beings who choose to help each other are stronger than those who force others to serve them. Your colony works together by choice, and that makes all of you more than you could be alone. Enough! Vorthak raised his weapon, which began to glow with dangerous energy. The trial is over. These cubs have failed completely and must be retrained. The human who corrupted them must be eliminated to prevent this weakness from spreading. But before Vorthak could fire his weapon, something amazing happened. The other colonists began emerging from their shelters, and they were not running away. Instead, they were walking toward Marcus and the cubs, led by Dr. Martinez and Administrator Johnson. You want to hurt Marcus? Dr. Martinez called out. Then you'll have to go through all of us. That man saved our lives more times than we can count, said Tom Bradley, the same man who had once worried about Marcus feeding wild animals. And those cubs helped us survive the worst storm in our colony's history. If they're aliens, then they're the best aliens we could ask for. More colonists gathered around Marcus, forming a protective circle. They were scared of the powerful aliens and their weapons, but they were more determined to protect their friend than they were afraid of getting hurt. Vorthak looked around at the humans in confusion. Why do you defend him? He holds no power over you. He has not conquered you or forced your obedience. That's exactly why we're defending him, Administrator Johnson said firmly. Marcus earns our respect and friendship through his actions, not through threats or force. That's what real leadership looks like. For the first time since the ships had arrived, Vorthak seemed uncertain. This was clearly not how he had expected things to go. The tension in the air was so thick that Marcus felt like he could barely breathe. Vorthak stood with his weapon pointed at the crowd of humans, his black eyes reflecting no emotion. The cubs, who Marcus now knew were actually powerful alien princes and princesses, stood ready to fight to protect him and the colony. Marcus looked around at his neighbors, people who had once thought he was going a little crazy for feeding wild animals every night. Now they were willing to risk their lives to stand with him against cosmic beings who could probably destroy their entire planet with a thought. This is wrong, Marcus said, stepping forward despite Alpha's attempt to hold him back. Nobody needs to get hurt here. If I did something wrong by helping these kids when they were hungry, then punish me. But leave everyone else alone. Vorthak tilted his head, studying Marcus like he was looking at a strange insect. You would sacrifice yourself for these other humans? They are not your offspring or your clan members. You gain nothing from protecting them. I don't need to gain anything, Marcus said simply. They're my friends and neighbors. We look out for each other because that's what people do. That is not what people do in my experience, Vorthak replied. Beings serve themselves and their own interests. The strong rule the weak. That is the natural order of the universe. Maybe that's how things work where you come from, Doctor, Martinez said, stepping up beside Marcus. But here, we've learned that everyone is stronger when we help each other succeed. Before Vorthak could respond, the sky above them began to change again. But this time, it was not dark ships that appeared. Instead, the air itself seemed to sparkle and shine, filled with points of light like tiny stars. The light grew brighter and brighter until it was almost too beautiful to look at directly. When the light faded, a new being stood among them. She was tall and graceful, her body seeming to be made of liquid starlight and flowing crystal. Her eyes were the same deep purple as the cub's eyes, but ancient and wise beyond measure. When she moved, The air around her danced with colors that had no names. Every human in the crowd gasped at her beauty. Even Vorthak stepped back and lowered his weapon, his metal skin seeming to grow darker in the presence of this magnificent being. Mother, Alpha, Beta, and Gamma said together, their voices filled with joy and relief. Siltharion, the infinite, star ruler of 300 star systems, looked down at her children with eyes full of love and pride. Then she turned her gaze to Marcus, and he felt like she could see straight through to his soul. So, she said, her voice like music made of starlight, you are the human who has been caring for my children. Marcus tried to speak but could only manage a small squeak. He was standing face to face with a being so powerful that she probably could create or destroy entire planets if she wanted to. His mind could barely process what was happening. Do not be afraid, Siltharion said gently. I am not here to punish you. I am here to thank you. Thank me? Marcus finally found his voice. But Vorthak said I corrupted your kids and broke some kind of cosmic law. Siltharion looked at Vorthak with an expression that was not angry but was definitely not pleased. Vorthak believes that power should only be used to control others. He thinks that showing kindness to those weaker than ourselves makes us weak in return. With respect, Siltharion, Vorthak said, this human has taught your offspring to serve instead of to rule. They have learned to give instead of to take. These lessons will make them poor star rulers. Will they? Siltharion asked. She gestured toward the group of humans still standing protectively around Marcus. Look at what my children have accomplished, Vorthak. They have earned the loyalty and friendship of an entire community. These humans are willing to risk their lives to defend my cubs. Not because they fear them, but because they love them. She turned back to Marcus. In 8 months, my children have learned something that star rulers have not understood in thousands of years. They have learned that true power comes not from making others afraid of you, but from making others glad that you exist. Marcus looked at Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, who were now standing tall and proud in their transformed state. They still looked like his friends, just in a different form. They were always good kids, Marcus said quietly. Even when they were small and hungry, they were polite and kind to each other. I just gave them food and a warm place to sleep. They did all the hard work of growing into good people. Good people, Siltharion repeated thoughtfully. Yes, that is exactly what they have become. Not just powerful beings, but good people who use their power to help others. Vorthak made a sound of frustration. Sentiment and weakness will not help them rule star systems effectively. Won't they? Siltharion asked. Tell me, Vorthak, how many rebellions have you faced in your territories in the past century? How many planets have tried to break away from your rule? Vorthak was quiet for a moment. 17 major rebellions, he admitted. But I crushed them all. And how much energy and resources did you waste putting down those rebellions? How many beings died because they would rather fight than live under your rule? Siltharion gestured toward the human colonists again. Look at these people. They face hardships every day on this difficult planet. But they work together willingly because they trust each other. No one has to force them to cooperate. They do it because they believe it makes all of them stronger. She walked over to Marcus and placed one gentle hand on his shoulder. This human has shown my children what leadership really means. A true leader makes others want to follow, not forces them to obey. Marcus felt warmth flow through him from her touch, like sitting in sunshine on a perfect spring day. I wasn't trying to teach them anything about leadership, he said. I just wanted to help them when they were hungry. That is exactly why your lessons were so valuable, Siltharion said with a smile. You showed kindness without expecting anything in return. You shared what little you had with strangers who could give you nothing back. You treated my children as friends and family, not as tools or servants. She stood up and addressed the entire crowd of humans and aliens. Today, I am declaring a new tradition for my people. From now on, young star rulers will not just learn to command through fear and power. They will also learn to lead through compassion and friendship. Vorthak looked shocked. Siltharion, you cannot be serious. Yes, it does, she agreed. And it is long past time for that change. My children have shown me a better way. They have learned to earn loyalty instead of demanding it, to create strength instead of just wielding it. She turned back to Marcus one more time. You have given my family a gift more precious than all the treasures of the galaxy. You have taught them that love freely given is worth more than obedience taken by force. Marcus felt tears in his eyes. They gave me a gift too, he said. After my wife died, I felt alone and useless. Your kids gave me purpose again. They reminded me that taking care of others is what makes life worth living. Alpha stepped forward and put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. You will always be our family, he said. No matter how far we travel among the stars, we will remember the human who shared his dinner with 3 hungry cubs. Siltharion smiled at this display of affection between her child and the human. I have a decision to make now, she announced. The trial is complete, and my children have passed with honor. But the question remains, what happens next? She looked directly at Marcus. I could take you with us, to travel among the stars and see wonders beyond imagination. You have earned a place among star rulers as an honored friend and teacher. Marcus felt his heart jump at the thought of traveling to other worlds and seeing the incredible things that must exist in the vast universe. But then he looked around at the colony, at his neighbors and friends who had stood with him against cosmic powers. Thank you, Marcus said slowly. That's the most amazing offer anyone has ever made to me. But I think I need to stay here. This is my home. And these people are my family too. The terraforming work isn't finished, and the colony still needs engineers who understand the equipment. Siltharion nodded approvingly. You choose duty and loyalty over adventure and glory. That makes you even more worthy of respect. She raised one hand, and the air around the colony began to shimmer. Then I give you this gift instead. This planet and this star system are now under my protection. No one will ever threaten your colony again, and I will ensure that your terraforming work succeeds completely. Furthermore, she continued, you will have friends among the stars who will never forget you. If you ever need help, call their names to the sky, and they will come. Alpha, Beta, and Gamma each stepped forward to hug Marcus goodbye. They had grown to their full adult size now, tall and elegant and obviously powerful. But their eyes still held the same warmth and friendship that Marcus remembered from when they were small and hungry. Thank you for everything, Beta said softly. Thank you for teaching us what friendship really means, Gamma added. Alpha was the last to say goodbye. You saved us from becoming the kind of rulers who lead through fear alone. We will spend our lives trying to be worthy of what you taught us. As the star rulers prepared to leave, Vorthak approached Marcus one final time. The alien warrior seemed thoughtful rather than angry now. Human, he said, I do not fully understand what happened here today, but I have seen something that I thought was impossible. Beings choosing to follow a leader who does not force their obedience. Perhaps I should study these methods in my own territories. When the aliens were gone and the sky had returned to normal, Marcus found himself surrounded by his neighbors. They were all talking at once, asking questions and expressing amazement at what they had witnessed. Marcus, Doctor, Martinez said with a huge grin. Do you realize what just happened? You accidentally became the first human to change the politics of an entire galactic civilization just by being nice to some hungry kids. Marcus laughed, still trying to process everything that had happened. I just did what felt right, he said. Who knows? Maybe that's all anyone needs to do to make the universe a little better. That night, Marcus sat outside his house eating dinner just like he had every night for the past 8 months. But now he was alone again, and the silence felt different than it had before, not empty and sad like it used to be, but peaceful and full of good memories. As he looked up at the stars, Marcus could swear he saw 3 particular points of light twinkling a little brighter than the others, as if his friends were saying hello from across the galaxy. Marcus smiled and raised his cup of coffee toward the stars. Take care of yourselves out there, he said softly. And remember what I taught you about sharing your food. Somewhere in the vast cosmos, 3 young star rulers smiled and continued learning how to change the universe through kindness, one planet at a time.